Let me tell you about the day I realized I had more money than I'd ever had in my life, and I was completely, utterly miserable. Not broke, not sick, not lonely, just trapped. And the worst part? I had built the trap myself, one paycheck at a time. Here's the question nobody asks out loud, but everyone thinks about at 2 a.m. What if the thing you spent your whole life chasing is actually the thing that's slowly suffocating you? Because here's what I've come to believe after studying the finances and life patterns of hundreds of people across dozens of countries. Money and freedom are not the same thing. In fact, for most people, the more aggressively they chase money, the further away from real freedom they actually get. And today, I'm going to prove that to you 3 times over. Then, I'm going to show you the way out. But first, let's destroy a myth that you were probably raised to believe. You were taught that money equals freedom. Every commercial, every motivational poster, every LinkedIn hustle bro has repeated this to you since childhood. Get rich, get free, work hard, earn more, and one day you'll be able to do whatever you want. Sounds reasonable, right? Except the data tells a completely different story. A 2021 study published in the journal Nature Human Behavior tracked over 1.7 million people across 164 countries and found that beyond a certain income threshold, about $95,000 a year in the US, additional income actually correlates with a decrease in day-to-day emotional well-being. Not an increase, a decrease. More money, less happiness. Not because money is evil, but because of what people sacrifice to get it. Think about that for a second. You're working 60-hour weeks, skipping vacations, cancelling on your kids' school plays, eating lunch at your desk, all in pursuit of something that's past a certain point statistically makes your daily life worse. So how does this happen? Why do smart, driven, ambitious people keep walking into this trap? 3 stories. 3 very different people. One uncomfortable pattern. Meet David. David grew up watching his parents stress about money every single month. The electricity bill, the car repair, Christmas on a credit card. He swore he would never live like that. And he didn't. By 32, David was pulling in $340,000 a year as a managing director at a consulting firm. He had a beautiful apartment in a city he barely had time to enjoy. He had a savings account that would make your jaw drop. He also hadn't taken more than 4 consecutive days off work in 6 years. His marriage ended. His health deteriorated. His friendships became LinkedIn connections. People he congratulated on promotions but hadn't spoken to in years. David had more money than his parents ever dreamed of. But here's the thing. He had less freedom than they did. His parents, after 6 p.m., were done. They were present. They watched TV with him. They showed up. David's phone never went quiet. His calendar owned him. His clients owned him. His bonus structure owned him. He had traded the financial insecurity of his childhood for a different kind of cage. One with gold bars. Stop. Before we go to example 2, I want you to answer this honestly. How many times this week have you checked your work email outside of work hours? Because for David, the answer was every single day. Multiple times. Before bed. In the middle of the night. On Sunday mornings. And every single notification was a reminder that he didn't actually own his time. Someone else did. Now meet Sofia. Sofia's story is different, and in some ways even more painful. Sofia did everything right by society's rulebook, went to a top university, got a stable government job with a pension and benefits, paid her mortgage diligently for 15 years, built up a retirement fund. By 45, She was financially secure in a way that most people would envy. She had no debt. She had savings. She was, by every traditional measure, winning. But Sofia had a dream she'd been putting off since she was 23. She wanted to open a small pottery studio. Nothing fancy. A place where she could teach weekend classes, sell handmade ceramics, and work with her hands. Every year for 22 years, she said. Maybe next year, when I have more saved up. Every year she stayed in the job that paid well, but left her spiritually hollow. Because here's the brutal truth about financial security that nobody talks about. Security without autonomy is just a comfortable prison. Sofia had all the financial security in the world and zero freedom to actually live the life she'd imagined. She was safe, but she was not free. Here's a stat that should shake you. According to research from Cornell University, the number one regret of people over 70 is not the things they did. It's the things they didn't do. The businesses they never started. The passions they never pursued. The lives they didn't live because they were too busy optimizing for safety. Sofia's financial security, built over decades of sacrifice, had become the reason she felt trapped rather than the reason she felt free. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Meet Marcus. Marcus is not a cautionary tale of someone who sacrificed everything for money. Marcus actually quit his corporate job at 38, moved to Lisbon with his wife and 2 kids, started a small online business, and now makes about $60,000 a year, less than half of what he made before. And he will tell you, without hesitation, that he is more free now than he has ever been in his life. But wait, how? $60,000 with a family in a major European city? How is that freedom? Because Marcus made a radical decision that most people are too afraid to make. He designed his life around what he actually needed, not what he had been conditioned to want. He and his wife sat down and calculated their genuine cost of living. Not the inflated lifestyle they had built up over years of raises and promotions, but the actual minimum threshold for a comfortable, meaningful, happy life. It came out to significantly less than they expected. Then he built an income that cleared that threshold by 20%, with enough flexibility to be home by 3 in the afternoon every day, to coach his son's football team, to take August off entirely. Was it scary? Absolutely. But Marcus made a distinction that David and Sofia never made. And it's the key insight of this entire video. There is a massive difference between financial security and financial freedom. Security means you can survive. Freedom means you can choose. And you can have security without freedom, as Sofia discovered. And you can have freedom without excess, as Marcus proved. The trap that David fell into is what behavioral economists call the hedonic treadmill. Every raise you get, your lifestyle expands to meet it. You upgrade the apartment, you take the nicer vacations, you buy the car with the heated seats. Then the raise doesn't feel like enough anymore, and you need another one, and another. So you work harder, you take on more responsibility, and suddenly you're David, objectively wealthy and functionally imprisoned. This treadmill has no off switch unless you choose to step off it deliberately. The trap that Sofia fell into is subtler but equally devastating. It's the someday trap. Someday when I have enough saved. Someday when the kids are older. Someday when things calm down. The problem with someday is that it has never once appeared on a calendar. It doesn't exist as a date. It's a moving target that stays permanently out of reach because the moment you get close, you find a new reason to push it further. Sofia's financial diligence, which should have been an asset, became the mechanism of her own delay. Every year she saved more was another year she convinced herself she wasn't quite ready yet. And the trap that Marcus almost fell into, the one he escaped at 38, is perhaps the most insidious of all. It's the belief that the number in your bank account determines your worth, your status, and your right to enjoy your life. Marcus was making $140,000 a year and felt like he couldn't stop, because what would people think? What would he tell people at dinner parties? He'd been a high earner for so long that his identity had fused with his income. Stepping back felt like failure, even though it was actually the bravest thing he ever did. Here's a number that might change how you think about all of this. According to research by Wharton professor Adam Grant and others studying work-life dynamics, the average person spends approximately 90,000 hours of their life at work. 90,000 hours. That's roughly 1/3 of your waking life. And yet most people spend more time choosing what to watch on Netflix on a Friday night than they spend deliberately designing how they want to spend those 90,000 hours. So what's the actual solution? Because I didn't come here just to depress you with stories about David and Sofia. Though honestly, a little healthy discomfort is useful when it gets you thinking. The solution is something I call the Freedom Threshold Framework, and it has 3 components. The first component is calculating your actual number, not your dream number, not your retirement fantasy. Your actual number, the monthly income that would allow you to live a genuinely comfortable, meaningful life right now, without the upgrades and the status signals and the keeping up with whoever you're keeping up with. For most people, when they do this calculation honestly, the number is significantly lower than they expected. The gap between what you need and what you think you need is where your freedom currently lives, locked up and ignored. The second component is separating income from identity. This is the hardest one. We live in a culture that treats your net worth as your self-worth, your job title as your personality, your salary as your scorecard. Marcus's breakthrough moment came when he asked himself a simple question. If nobody ever knew how much money I made, what would I choose to do with my time? Strip away the social validation, the comparisons, the status game, and what actually matters to you. What would you build? Where would you live? How would you spend a Tuesday afternoon? Your answers to those questions are a map to your actual values. And your actual values should be driving your financial decisions, not the other way around. The third component is building what I call a freedom fund rather than just a savings account. A savings account is passive. A freedom fund is intentional. It has a specific purpose: to buy you options. The option to say no to a job you hate. The option to take 6 months and try something you've been afraid to try. The option to move somewhere you actually want to live. Sofia had money but no options, because her money was structured around security rather than choice. The Freedom Fund isn't about having the most. It's about having enough to give yourself permission to move. Let me be direct with you for a second, because I think you deserve that. The reason most people never make this shift isn't because they lack the intelligence or the discipline. It's because they're scared. Stepping off the treadmill feels reckless when everyone around you is still running. Choosing less money for more autonomy feels irresponsible in a world that has told you since childhood that more is always better. Pursuing a simpler, freer life feels like settling when every algorithm you've ever interacted with is trying to sell you the idea that you should want more, be more, have more. But consider this. What if the people who are actually winning aren't the ones with the biggest portfolios? What if they're the ones who figured out what enough looks like for them? and then built a life that clears that bar with room left over to breathe, to rest, to be present, to be human. David eventually figured this out. It took a second marriage failing and a health scare at 46 before he finally stepped back. He now runs a small consulting practice, works with clients he actually likes, charges what he needs rather than what he can maximum extract, and takes 4 weeks off every summer without his phone. He makes less than half of what he used to make. He describes it as the first time in 15 years that he actually feels like his life belongs to him. Sofia opened the pottery studio 3 years ago. It didn't make her rich, but she teaches classes on Saturday mornings to a group of retirees, teenagers, and young professionals who show up in the rain just to work with their hands for a few hours. She told me recently that she feels more purpose in a single Saturday morning than she felt in 20 years of the job that paid twice as much. And Marcus? Marcus just sent me a photo from his apartment in Lisbon. It was Tuesday afternoon. He was at the beach with his kids. His laptop was home. His out of office was on. He looked, as far as I could tell from a photo, like a man who had solved a puzzle that most people spend their whole lives staring at without ever figuring out. Money is a tool, and tools are only valuable insofar as what they build. A hammer sitting in a drawer doesn't build anything. Wealth accumulated at the cost of your time, your health, your relationships, and your autonomy doesn't actually build the life you wanted. It just builds a more expensive version of a life you're not living. The question isn't how much money you have. The question is, what is your money for? What is it enabling? What choices is it giving you? And if you had to be honest, really, brutally, uncomfortably honest, is it giving you more freedom or less? Real financial freedom is not a number. It's a relationship between what you have, what you need, and what you're choosing to do with the difference. Get that relationship right, and you don't need to be rich to be free. Get it wrong, and no amount of money will ever feel like enough. So here's your homework, and I mean this seriously. This week, sit down with a piece of paper and write down 2 numbers. First, what does your life actually cost? Not what you spend, but what you genuinely need to live well. Second, what is the minimum income that would clear that bar with a comfortable margin? Then, look at those 2 numbers and ask yourself honestly, are the financial decisions you're making right now moving you closer to freedom or further away from it? If this video made you think differently about money and freedom, hit subscribe, because this is the kind of conversation we have here every week. And if you want to go deeper, there's a video right here on how to actually calculate your real freedom number. Because trust me, the math will surprise you. Let me give you the quick recap before we wrap up, because I want these ideas to stick. First, money and freedom are not the same thing, and conflating them is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make. The research is clear. Beyond a certain income level, more money tends to cost you the very things that make life worth living: time, autonomy, presence, and peace. Second, the 3 traps, the hedonic treadmill, the someday trap, and the identity fusion trap, operate mostly below the level of conscious awareness. You don't notice you're in them until you've lost years to them. The only way out is to name them, which is what we did today. Third, the freedom threshold framework gives you an actionable path. Calculate your actual number. Separate income from identity. Build a freedom fund with intention and a specific purpose. These aren't abstract ideas. They're moves you can start making this week with the life and the resources you currently have. And fourth, the one that ties it all together: freedom is a practice, not a destination. You don't get free and then stay free automatically. You choose freedom in how you spend, in what you tolerate, in what you say yes and no to every single day. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it, and the harder it becomes for anyone or anything to take it away from you. That's the game. And now you know how it's played. If this video gave you even one idea worth acting on, I genuinely appreciate you sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Not for the algorithm, just because some conversations deserve a wider room. Hit subscribe if you want to keep having conversations like this one. We go deep on money, mindset, and building a life that actually makes sense every single week. And now, seriously, this time,